Hello, everyone. Welcome to Work Ready, Living a Fulfilling Career Journey. My name is Ole Kagan. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for LA County Library, and I thank you so much for joining us this evening. Work Ready is a program that's designed to help job seekers affected by COVID get jobs or improve your work situation. And by that, I mean get a raise or plan a more sustainable career path. And the way that the library is helping you do that is three ways. The first is we're lending out laptops and Wi-Fi hotspots out of 20 library locations located in all over the geographic area of the county. All you have to do is go to our website, lacountylibrary.org, click on the Work Ready link, which is right in the middle, fill out a very short and simple registration form where you select the location where you want to pick up the laptop. We'll send you an email with all the instructions. You go to the library, pick up the laptop. You have a laptop and a Wi-Fi hotspot that takes up to 10 connections. So you can connect with the laptop that you're going to get. And if you have anybody in your family or friends who need an internet connection, that hotspot will work for that too. And you get that for 6 weeks. The second way Work Ready is helping our job seekers is through events like this one, where we focus on all sorts of work-related topics. The third way that Work Ready is helping is the library is purchasing the latest and greatest work-related books and ebooks and audiobooks, as a matter of fact. So if you go to our website, you can search the catalog for work-related books. We have a special list that you can get from the Work Ready page of ebooks specifically about work-related topics, so you can view the books even as you listen to this program. We have all sorts of other work-related resources for you. Now, this program is going to be available after the fact on YouTube, as are all Work-Ready programs via our YouTube channel, youtube.com/LA County Library. And all of the Work-Ready programs are in the Work and Career playlist, so you can see them at any time. So relax. If you're busy taking notes, don't worry about it. You'll be able to review the program again in the future. All right. Now I would like to introduce our guest for today. Dev Aujla has had a nonlinear career that makes him perfectly suited to talk to us today. His experiences are diverse. He ran a nonprofit in Canada that worked with thousands of young people a year, ran a recruiting firm in New York that built teams for mission-driven companies like Change.org and Planned Parenthood, worked in venture capital, where he was on a team of 4 who started 5 companies that have raised over $500 million, and most recently has been the CEO of Bode, a clothing line that is carried in over 165 stores, has a flagship in New York, and shows in Paris Fashion Week. Dev has written 2 books, Making Good, Finding Money and Community in a Changing World, and the book that we're going to be talking about today, 50 Ways to Get a Job, an unconventional guide to finding work on your terms. In 50 Ways, he shares practical exercises that help one not only find a job, but find a fulfilling career along the way. The book is as much about how to live as how to get a job. We are very excited to have Dev speak with us today.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. I guess I'll just start by telling you a little bit about where I came from in my personal path and why I wrote 50 Ways to Get a Job. So 50 Ways to Get a Job came from a 3-year research project that I did with a team of other people where we talked to over 3,000 people about all the career resources that are currently out there. So we looked at everything from the 1970s all the way forward. We talked to career counselors, we talked to guidance counselors, we talked to sort of the latest tech-enabled people that are trying to figure out career. We read all kinds of career books. And what we found was there was so much that was just repeated. It was like, and especially all the content today online, it seems like it's like pulled out of these books and then just kind of like repurposed and created in lists, and wasn't really true to what was happening today. And it was a lot of it gave you a lot of anxiety, honestly. And there was a different way that was kind of emerging that was much more about sort of following a path or following a question that you had. And one of the ways that I really wanted to address that was looking at like how do we get ourselves to get agency back? You know, how do the job search itself is one where you start and you're on this high and you get going and you go to job boards and you start applying and you start sending emails out, and then all of a sudden you just feel this void, and there's this like emotional kind of roller coaster that happens to basically everybody after 3 weeks. What we found is people are kind of at their emotional low, and you start even questioning that you could do the jobs that you were doing right before. It's like I'm not even getting the job that I had before. What is going on? And that comes from the fact that we're sending all this information out into the world. We're sending it in on the internet. We don't have that face-to-face experience, and we just lose our agency. And so I started looking at every sort of step along the way with the main question of like, how do we get that agency back? And one of the exercises that I love, that I like starting off with, is the idea of creating a to learn list. And the idea behind a to learn list is something that gives you directionality and gives you that control back. So it is simply a list of everything you want to learn. And that is both things that are in a job and like job related or skills or qualities that you want to embody, but it could be anything. And what that does is it ends up being this like frame that will follow you throughout your 6 weeks or 4 weeks of a job search, that enables you to decide like, if this is the right job to take, is this the opportunity to take? And if you look at that list, you can ask yourself questions like, what job or what career could teach me the most things on this to learn list? And the answers are going to be unexpected. And as you start doing the research and you start following the questions and start learning outside of school and actually through your career itself, you end up meeting different people, you end up speaking, you end up going to different events, you end up just learning about different things that lead into different jobs. And so I'll touch on that all the way throughout. But the other thing that I did with 50 Ways to Get a Job was, it was looking, it's a book that when you pick it up, you think it's okay, here's how you do your resume when you normally think about job books, here's how you interview. But it is just as much about how to be during all of this work. Because oftentimes it's like I feel like all those job books were written for people that were like hyper extroverted or networking or like really want to get out there, and I personally like am not that person. And I realize that there's just like a different way to be. And sometimes when you aren't that and you're like feel like now's all of a sudden the one time in your life that you're supposed to go out there and meet people, it's like there must be a different way. And there is. And so the book is kind of split between all these exercises that are focused internally and are a little quieter and calmer and are just as valuable at giving yourself agency, at discovering new opportunities that lead you in a new path, as those types of extroverted decisions or extroverted networking type exercises that I feel like were so common in the books we read. Um, the other piece was that I had a friend go through, and this was really important to me, and actually read the book as I went as I wrote it. And she comes from a counseling background, and I looked for all these moments that could create anxiety and like feel intimidating. And then we worked on those moments. So the book kind of got rewritten in two different ways. So of course you like write it all out, and then we picked out all these anxious moments and we unpacked what those were about. And then we started to like build and write, what could you do that wasn't that way? Sorry, I don't know if you can hear that. It's New York. That's that. Um, like, can you hear me? Sorry for the.
I could hear you now. A second ago, it was like you were muted, but I didn't hear anything on the side there. So,
Okay,
so you're
sorry,
good. You're awesome.
sorry. There's somebody lighting fireworks off outside my window. So
Oh well.
apologies. Um, yeah, and so it was trying to find a different alternative that was that. Oh, great! I'm glad you guys didn't hear the fireworks. It just was in my apartment. That was less anxious. Um, and so the first book, I saw a question, does your book talk about remote jobs in the current climate? And the book is all about like remote jobs and like it's the job process itself is actually very similar. So what the book talks about is like how to spend that 5 weeks and how to spend that time in a way that is like really grounding and like driven and provides a way for you to meet new people, even in a remote environment. In fact, I think a lot of the ways that 50 Ways is set up, and I'd be curious to hear like what you thought. Um, was that it actually works a lot better because you're able to do that research and you're able to reach out to people and you're able to access people in a way that is totally location independent. And I find that like the emails that you send, there's this one email that the book is kind of based on is, and I call it kind of like email that'll get you the job, is like follows a very specific format, and it is, prove that you are mission aligned, that you have a connection to the mission with real stories. Prove the next few sentences, you prove that you have a real skill, a hard skill that you can offer. And then the third paragraph is about saying, hey, I was starting to do this work already. I was moving down this path already. And then I discovered you and your company, and I feel like I want to speak. And what's interesting about that is that it sounds like, yes, you could just go and write that email, but at each step along the way, it actually takes about 5 or 10 different exercises to get to. So to prove that you're actually mission aligned, it can't be enough to go to a company's website and be like, okay, they're a journalism organization, like their mission is to tell the news, and that's it. It has to be like, what is the question that's leading that company? So the question could be like, what is the future of storytelling? Or how do you tell the truth? How do you understand what's going on in the world around you? And then like, what are the people that are doing that work? So in order to prove that you're mission aligned, you have to take the first steps in order to meet that. So you have to start meeting other people that are thinking about the future of storytelling. You end up finding conferences and different events like the Future of Storytelling Conference, or you know, you'll discover worlds. And in each time you start doing that path, those all are exact individual moments that become stories in that a couple sentences of Are You Mission Aligned? And then you go to the next one, which is about skills, and you start looking at yourself and you start asking yourself, like, what are other jobs that I could be getting? What are other volunteer opportunities that I could take? What are other internships or other opportunities for like small contract work that I could do that could teach me these, that I could learn on that job? And you end up having these other stories to tell for that actually lead you along the way. And the third is actually being able to know that you actually were taking that path. So in doing those exercises, you end up being further along, and it happens along the way. So before you end up writing that email that is like the perfect email to the perfect person to the perfect company that you want, oftentimes what we found is people end up finding a job over here. So they end up finding a job while they're doing the work to become mission aligned in order to build their credibility or build their understanding of their own mission. They end up finding a job and finding someone that they want to work with that they never would have expected. And that ends up being the path they take instead of the initial direction of being like, I know I want to work for a big company that I've heard about, and so I'm going to send this email. So it's a different way of thinking about your job search that it just gives you something to do over the next 4 weeks, 6 weeks, that gives you control back. Because if you find yourself at any moment sitting at the computer and just going through a job board, trying to find a thing that looks or calls out or that you could apply for, and sending it off, chances are you are going to end up in a spot that feels bad and feels like you don't have agency. So all of the exercises in the book are all about trying to give you that power back and put you in a place where you know what you know that next step, whether you're introverted, whether you're extroverted, and yeah, are motivated to continue. Let me see another question. Oh, the career counselor that will guide us. I hope so. I mean, I really think that it ends up being more focused on the self, and I'd be curious to hear what you thought, like, because I feel like there's a little bit of my goal in writing this book was, yes, here's a book on how to get a job, but also simultaneously is a book about how to live and how to be. And I feel like that is such a, they're so tied up together. You know, it's one of the reasons why I love this liminal moment of job search is because it is one of the few moments in your lifetime where you can rethink your relationship to time, how you spend time, your routine. You can rethink your relationship to money. You can rethink what you do every day. It changes the relationships you have in your life and in the office. It changes whether you're remote, online, where you live. It is literally one of these moments where if you are searching for a job, all of that is up at play. It is all possible to change. And that in itself is touches on all the aspects of our lives. And that's why the book feels different, I think, than a lot of other job books because it recognizes that and it tries to come at it from a place that is grounded and calm and um, it honors the fact that this is actually a moment where our whole lives can change and not just our work.
Right. It's interesting you ask how I feel the book is like, and throughout the book you talk about conversations you have with people, often at coffee shops, and that have inspired some idea or some way of thinking. And that's what this book is like. It's like a almost like a friend or like a counselor that you meet at a coffee shop, and you meet multiple times because you can't read the whole thing cover to cover. I mean, you have to do this stuff.
It's
And so
not it's not
yeah,
that thing.
so you meet it's like sitting with somebody in a coffee shop and them asking you, just tell me your story, and them sitting and listening, um, and then going on to something else, asking another interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, just to give you an idea, I feel like instead of talking about an abstract, like some of the chapters are so go on a research trip, create a company brief, make your own finish line, find a just ahead mentor, commit to doing these four things when you feel overwhelmed, make structural changes to your living space, sit quietly in a room for 45 minutes,
Yeah, that's an
email someone
interesting
you
one there.
don't, email someone you don't know, uh,
I
find
like find your center of gravity.
find your
Can you
center of gravity.
can you talk about find your center of gravity, because that one was so simple, and yet it seems to have a very powerful had a powerful effect on you, and it kind of changed the way that you interacted with people.
Yeah, so finding your center of gravity is sort of a recognition that we all have an aspect of us that actually influences a lot of our decisions. And for example, I met a nurse and interviewed with a nurse, and her center of gravity is, her center of gravity is control, and it control, and she ended up in a job, and so she was like at the end of her career retiring, she was like talking about her center of gravity. I was trying to be like, well, what is the thing that both your family says about you, that your friends say about you, that that you find yourself always drawn towards. And it's like we arrived at this idea that it's like an aspect of control, and then she kind of made the connection to her job being like, well, I found this career in critical care nursing in CC, where it's the one moment where a nurse actually has like full control over all the patients because it's so immediate and so like there's such an emergency going on, and and it just happens to be the one of the few places where the nurse is even more in control than a doctor oftentimes in this type of situation. And so I started thinking about, what would it look like to sort of make a decision on your career based on your own personal center of gravity. And I use the word center of gravity is because it kind of bends reality around. So it's one way of telling is if you're given a question or a choice, and one of them has this your center of gravity where you are in control, or you are you're going to be liked, or that, then you will always choose that thing. But oftentimes, honestly, if you start just talking to your friends and or your partners or your family about what you think your center of gravity, what is the one thing that you always think you would choose over the other, or that you always prioritize over the other, they're way better at it than finding out about it than you, because they've already worked around it in themselves. But then you take that sort of something that comes more from like almost like a self-help type world and you apply that to a job world and you start thinking about, well, what kind of career or what kind of job would actually benefit from that? Where the default would actually be like aided by having a center of gravity in that way. And, for me personally, when I made the move towards recruiting, initially, it was all about, for me, it was all about, being liked and understanding people and, having that as a real kind of key fact. And I really thought a lot about my relationships with people and what did they think and how did I interact? How do we interact with each other? And recruiting ended up being one of these places that was all about those two relationships and being very aware of those two relationships and like played to that strength. So I kind of ended up using, and I've found myself using it in totally different industries and totally different careers. But it is a different way of orientating yourself towards a job search. It's just a different way of thinking and trying to find, so you don't just think, oh, I should go work for Google or I should go work for, whatever the company is that you happen to be looking at that are always in the news. There are so many other companies out there and there's so many other jobs that we just don't naturally see. So how can you start approaching things from different angles and finding jobs and careers that aren't posted that are fit for you and a fit for no one else?
When you brought up the idea of asking other people about what they think your center of gravity is, I had almost a bit of anxiety, because you're going to find out something you may not be wanting to hear or you may not expect to hear.
Mhm.
And well, you don't talk about fear so much specifically in your book, but I wanted to ask you because for a lot of people, things like sending a stranger an email is very anxiety provoking and
Totally.
provides a lot of fear, as does self-exploration. So
Yeah.
how do you feel that fear factors into a job search or should factor into a job search?
Yeah, I mean, it is very it's an uncomfortable prospect, and it's especially it's just not the rhythm of what you're used to doing. Our bodies store so much knowledge. I mean, actually, the Olympics is such a amazing thing to understand right now because you look at every sport and you like the bodies are shaped so specifically for that sport. Like the swimmers have huge hands, they have long arms, the shot putters are smaller and like more power. Like literally, it's just like body to sport. It's like the bodies have been formed by a sport. And just like that is so apparent in Olympic athletes that spend 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day training. Like our bodies and our minds are also shaped and like created to what we spend 8 hours a day working on. It just there's no difference. And so those patterns that we're used to, or those ways that especially if we've been in a job for that's been very consistent, we have a way of interrelating to the world. And then all of a sudden you're in a job search and you have to do something different, and you're not, it's like taking a shot putter and throwing them into the pool. You're like, it's kind of gonna work, but maybe not. And it's just like you're very and that is where the fear comes from. A lot of fear comes from just doing something really new. And one of the my favorite quotes is about that stress is resisting the reality of what's
Mhm.
happening, and that understanding that you're doing something new, that it's not about fear, it's not that you have like anything valid to be afraid of, but it's because you are doing something new, you're playing a new sport, or you're in a different mode than you've ever been before, that honoring that and like taking a second to let yourself know that, then it gives you a reason to understand why you're feeling that way. And it can help you kind of take the next step or know that, yes, I'm feeling this way. That is totally valid. Of course, I'm feeling this way. But that feeling itself isn't a product of my inability to do it. It's a product of me doing something different. And that can help make you make that move over the top. The other thing is, especially doing something like emailing someone you don't know, which is one of the chapters in the book, which is like hard to get your head around. You're like, why? What am I going to say? And so one of the things
Or what are they going to say to me?
what are they
I
going to
feel
say
like
to
you're
me?
going to email someone, they're going to be like, bah.
Yeah, like, oh my God, who are you? And it's one of the things I really, really like about that is there's like a quick rule, which is like, okay, if you're going to ask somebody for 30 minutes of time, then spend 60 minutes preparing. So spend two times before preparing for how much you ask. But what that is about is actually that 60 minutes of research about that person. So like Googling them, reading whatever they've written before, trying to figure out what other companies they've worked at, looking up those companies, understanding what they've been, finding some random person that they posted about or something and looking at just kind of like digging around their past online, like trying to understand this space. That's actually just as valuable. And that, so even if the person doesn't get back to you, say the person's a total asshole. They're like, no, that's it. I don't want to talk to you. Look at you. I don't even like your LinkedIn profile. Get out of here. And then what I find is actually way more valuable than those conversations has been that research that people have done before because they've stumbled on companies they never knew about. They've stumbled on adjacent groups that they never heard about. They stumbled on worlds that are interesting. And that research that is personal, that doesn't actually involve you going out and reaching out to that person. It doesn't even involve you. Even if you did, great. You send it off, great. You're like, thank you. You're approaching it. It changes your whole approach because now you've sent this email off and you're like already grateful for this person for having led you down the 60 minutes of like research that you never would have found. There's no way you would have entered or read or started researching these things before. You already have something to say to this person. There's something that is actually that you can be grateful for. And that positionality of being grateful is such an opening way to address somebody. Because if you can ever think of a moment where somebody has approached you and they're like, hey, I just want to tell you right off the bat, I want to thank you because of my preparing for this call or getting to meet you, I discovered all about sumo. and which Oleg and I talked about before, but I ended up discovering all about a new world, and it ends up who would say something negative to that? All you can do is smile. It's all you can do. And even if that person doesn't contact you and says the worst thing imaginable, it's okay because you've already done this work, and this work is where the job opportunities come from. And that's what's interesting about the approach in 50 Ways to Get a Job is it focuses on this stuff here, not whether this person responds to you or you try to get the best open rate or try to game the system. No, whatever. Honestly, just let it go. They don't have to. But this research that you do before is the moment you discover a company you never heard of or an interest you have or something else you want to add to your to learn list. And that can take you down a different path.
Exactly, and it all fits into the job seeking, sort of the holistic view of job seeking. And Sandra in the chat had asked about networking, but I want to talk a little bit more about the research, which is invariably it's connected to the networking. It is part of the networking, and there's a few exercises that off the top of my head that I think of from the book, like write a company brief or make a list of, I think it was 20 people to follow, even
Yeah.
people you're not going to contact, just to keep track of people that you respect. So can you elaborate on more about what research means and how you can expand your scope in terms of careers and people?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the best ways if you go back to the idea of or say you want to get a job in journalism, and like just use continuing that example or climate change. You start going down this route and you like just start pretend that you are almost starting this company yourself or like you are doing something yourself in this space and you're trying to map it out and figure it out. So what would you do to fully understand that space? Who would you talk to? And what happens really quickly is you want to get into this new industry, you have no experience, so you're like, well, I gotta start at the bottom. And forget that. Just be like, well, what is the question? Like, I want to understand how to address climate change in my work. Great. So then all of a sudden you're like researching and understanding all the different solutions people have. You come across Paul Hawkins' book, you come across Project Drawdown with all these solutions, you start researching all these solutions. And what happens is you've actually started down the path of trying to figure it out yourself. And that moves you from a place of like, oh my God, I wish I could move into this industry to being a peer of somebody that is also figuring it out. And that little switch, that little move from like, oh my God, I just want to make a difference and I want to work in climate change. Like, oh my, how am I going to do that? I've just been in data science or working at customer service over here. I don't know how to do. And all of a sudden you researching and understanding what all the solutions, understanding who the conferences, where they go, not going. You don't even have to go. If you're not an extrovert, don't worry about going. forget it. COVID, don't even go. Just start researching it and start trying to understand it and pretend you had the resources to just make a difference in the space and start a company or give money or whatever it is. Do whatever you had those resources, then what would you start doing? Who would you start talking to? You don't even have to reach out to them. I keep saying that because I want to make sure people know that it doesn't have to be that fearful thing, but it's the act of doing that research prior that will help you discover and makes that switch between you being somebody that is trying to get in, that just has a vague idea, to a peer of someone that is also trying to figure things out. And very, very quickly, you end up being in a place where you know what the major conversations are that are in that industry, and you can even hear them, and you can take one from one conversation or one talk you heard, and you just repeat it to the next person. You're like, oh, but is this a big question that people are thinking about? And all of a sudden, you are actually doing the work. And that changes everything because it's people always say like it's easier to find a job if you're in a job and all that, but that's not true. It's not about being in a job, it's about being engaged in that question, and it's about being a peer. And you can put yourself in that position. There's nobody that is stopping you from being in that position. It is literally a choice by what you're choosing to do over the next 2 days or 3 days. If you're choosing to just hope and send things out, or you're choosing to actually do the research and be a peer doing the work that that industry would need you to do, then you all of a sudden start seeing yourself differently. You have something different to say to people, and you will naturally start finding things to work on.
So let's go to an adjacent question in terms because you're talking about finding, getting into maybe not even a specific job or some, different kind of jobs, something that you may not even been thinking of. And I want to talk about what a nonlinear career path is, because that's something that's what starts the book. Um, how and on in your introduction, of course, you're talking you have a nonlinear career path yourself. So what does that mean? And also, building on top of that, how does somebody who has been working essentially the same type of job or in the same industry for a long time jolt themselves into the possibility of a nonlinear, or looking at their path as nonlinear?
Yeah, I mean, so the idea of a nonlinear career path is that, I mean, it is what it sounds like. It is a career that could jump around from different industries. It basically it's almost like re-editing a film in a lot of ways. So it's like your life experience has been, and as you've written it in this chronological order, and you've come to know it as like I did this, and then I did this. If someone asks you what you did, you always go back, well, I started here, then I did this, and I moved over here to this company, and now there's a progression that people you understand even. It's a way you understand yourself. Now, a one way to kind of jolt that, to imagine you do something completely different that has nothing to do with your past, which is like a non-linear move, is to a small exercise that is like about, it feels a little playful, but you kind of have to go with me for a second, which is writing fiction or writing a fictional bio of yourself. And basically, you take 8 or 9 points that are real in your life. So, like, I went to this school, I lived in this place, I had this career for 15 years, and then you throw some curveballs in there. So, you throw like completely, like, I also lived here, I also spent like a year learning culinary school, like literally anything. And then you take all those facts and you look at them kind of outside of yourself for a second. And you might need to add some more fiction in there, something that's really far away, just to like really see yourself outside. And then you're like, okay, well, what bio could I write about this person that would be really exciting for me? That would feel like the most engaged job. That would like they already had that really exciting career that I wish I could have, but like this person with all these skills and all these random experiences, like what would that bio look like? So you take 10 minutes and you like write this little piece of fiction about some other person that's not you, that has all these crazy experiences and the life they've led and like where they've ended up and the career they have, and like, and then you take that and you look at that and you think about yourself, like, where is their actually energy? Some of it's going to be completely a joke. Like, oh wow, they're also like famous and they did this, and some of it's not relevant. But other things, there's all those little moments that are actually like, wow, that would be amazing if that actually was true. Like there's an energy there. There's something that's drawing me towards this aspect of this bio I just wrote. And then you go backwards. So now you go backwards from that aspect, that element of like your career that you said, this career of this fictional character, and you ask yourself like, what do I need, or what job could I take that would help me get there, or that could provide, teach me something. It might not be that job. That might be down the road. But what job could I get that could learn or could help me learn a few or three or four things that could tee me up for that? And that will lead you with, that will help you develop a different options for careers. All of a sudden, if you do that a few times, you'll have different types of jobs you've never expected taking that may make no sense in your linear path, but you are like, maybe that could be the right job for me. That could be something that teaches me these three or four things that tees me up for the next thing. So all of a sudden, you're seeing yourself differently and you're seeing all the puzzle pieces in your life differently. And once you do that, this is getting a little bit further along, but it also addresses kind of a question that's in the list about like how you see your skills or how help you understand different skills that you may have. Is you can start to rewrite your background mostly through omission, which is like leaving things out. So it's like now take your whole career, like or your LinkedIn page or whatever it is that you have your resume, whatever it is, and like take things off, like just leave them off for a second, even if it was like really important. And I see this all the time in people that have had like ad careers, or consulting careers or any industry where like I won this award, I fought for it, I worked so hard, everybody loved me because I did this thing. Just and it's so hard to be like I'm not even going to mention it in this resume, or I'm not even going to talk about it. But don't leave it out and try to craft a story from your life that's like might be the smallest moment. It might be the one book you read. It might be a one tiny part of your job you spent 5 years doing, but you spent 1 week working on a project that was like climate change focused or something like that. But like just write that down and take all the rest out. And then all of a sudden you re-edit your trajectory through omission and leaving things out, which can be really hard because it's what we've done. And it ends up looking and feeling like it has a direction that was totally different. And it looks like you had been planning this the whole time. And you have this other line, this other linear trajectory for yourself. And oftentimes it's like people, whenever they send their resumes or their bios, they just send everything they've done. It's like a list of all the stuff they've done. And it doesn't negate that work. It doesn't negate all that time was put in. That's what got you to where you are. It gives you the skills. Why it makes you valuable. But in these small moments of like trying to get a job or trying to prove yourself to somebody that may be a little bit of a nonlinear jump away, you got to make it so simple for them because they don't know why that's the case. And you might not even get a chance to explain why this actually is going to help this. It's why you're going to be excellent at the job, but it's not why you're going to get the job, which is a weird thing. It's why you're going to bring a different perspective to the table. You're going to be a voice in that field that is like unique and like has a take that's really important and has a skill set that's really diverse, but it's not going to be why you get that job. Why you get that job is if you retell your story and leave things out, even those things that are really important to you, because it'll help give you that kind of directionality towards a different path.
And looking at it from a different viewpoint, Raymond asked an interesting question. He said, is there a recommendation how to find a way to figure out what jobs are best for the abilities and skill sets that one has? So, you wrote that story, and now how do you then figure out what might be a good path to take?
Yeah, I mean, so this goes back to the following a question. So I often think like we've been trained in sort of the traditional method of like here's find a list of jobs and then like which job should I get? Should I go for a consultant or a hairdresser or a dentist or like it's like kind of that game they played in elementary schools with kids or I guess in grade 11s or 12 whatever it was. But it's like here's you fill out this form and here you go. You're this job. And what's different about today is that the job isn't going to be the answer. but the question you're asking or what you want to learn or what you were trying to do will lead you towards these jobs. Because the jobs that like there's like they're so amorphous, like people, the job titles are changing. If you even look at, if you go just browse, one of the exercises in the book is go to a job board and then leave.
I
And
like that. I like that one.
it's like that because you just go and you're trying to like understand what job titles are and what jobs are available, and you're just kind of browsing, but then like get out of there. Like take the job title, but like go. And why that's so interesting is because it's like if you start pursuing and trying to find the job instead of like the direction you want to go or the thing you want to learn, it's so much more, it's way narrower. It's like you're just going to end up finding all those jobs, but you aren't going to know why you're there. You're like, I don't know, like I'm doing this job. I am a graphic designer. I find all the graphic design jobs, but you don't know, you get that graphic design job and you don't really know why. Like, what am I doing here right now? Like, why am I here? And that is what gives you purpose. The answer to that simple question of like, what am I doing right now is what gives you that sense of everyday purpose. And so you can be a graphic designer, and if you have followed that path, that's what you're like, I have graphic design skills. I kind of think it's a job, but you like start pursuing this interest that you have in anything. It could be urban planning, just pulling things out of the air here. And you start learning about it and you start thinking about it, and there's energy, and you start thinking about yourself as peers for people, you start understanding the world, then you find this graphic design position. It kind of comes up that's at this small urban design firm. Like there's no way you're going to end up there if you went for graphic design jobs and went to the job board and like we're looking for general generic graphic design jobs. But you will be the perfect person that can answer the question at that urban design firm, being the graphic designer in house, that will be like, I know why I'm here. And I'm here because I have this interest that I want to learn about urban design. I see myself as a peer trying to make a difference in cities. And I'm like putting this skill to work, which goes right back to my initial thing I said about that email about like what your skill is, what your mission. I'm doing this already. Here's how. Can we talk? Is because that person, you as a person that's interested in urban design and also has the skill of graphic design, is the only person that should get that job. Versus every other time you apply for a graphic design job, you're just another name, you're another thing, you just have the skill, you have no mission, or you have the mission but you have no skill. And so that's the difference. And the difference is that it actually takes you to do this work that doesn't feel like it is as aligned with like I'm just getting my resume together, I just want to prepare my interview and I just want to get a job. Like what happened? You know, and you're doing all this work that feels strange. It's like going on a research trip. But what am I researching? It's like, well, you got to help five people. What does that, it's stuff that feels like you're going all over the place, but it really, really is a good way to spend time. And it is a good way to get a job. And it gives you back to that initial feeling I talked about of agency, agency over your time, agency over how you decide to live and what you decide to do for your work.
It's going to sound a little bit flippant when I say this, but when hearing you talk now and then going through the book, it feels a little bit uncomfortable because this is looking at the job search and getting a job and working in a job in not the traditional way, in maybe not the way of the many books that you read in creating this book. It sounds like a millennial kind of thing.
Yeah.
So why is this okay? Why is it okay to think about the jobs from your perspective and not try to be what the job needs or what the company needs?
Right. Well, I mean, I think we have the ability to think about ourselves and be able to do that kind of self work, and that if we're able to start looking inwards towards like what makes us come alive or what makes us feel interested or excited, it actually puts us in a place where we're not working for companies that are divorced from our interests or divorced from what we want to learn, and that actually enables us to do um, have purpose and do a really good job. Like do the work. I really believe that like this the the path that 50 ways to get a job kind of leads people isn't written for just like become a coach, become a millennial, do a like be a be another guide for another person. It's not just that. It's not. It actually is about jobs like or being an entrepreneur. Honestly,
Hmm.
that's the thing that I think is like the most common thread of like the millennial type ethos is like just start your own thing, like just be
Hmm.
your own. Like oftentimes, no. The answer is just to get a job. Like there's realities that you need to pay the bill. It's not
Yeah,
everybody set up
yeah.
to be an entrepreneur. It's like you got to get a job. And like I think oftentimes like that's really erased in the media narrative around like this kind of millennial path that people have. Um, and when I set out to sort of start doing this research, I really wanted to make sure that it honored the lineage of like jobs that where I came from, and like I'd love to share that. But it's one of the ways I started the book, um, and it's an amazing exercise to do for yourself as well. But it's I made a list of all the jobs that my parents, my family have had. So my parents, my grandparents, my great grandparents have had over the 100 years since they arrived to Canada. And the book is dedicated to them and to the jobs that they had. But this is the work that enabled me to be here. Cattleman, pig rancher, laborer, farmer, mill worker, truck driver, secretary, store manager, server, nurse, office manager, real estate agent, property manager, brewery technician, lawyer, bank teller, artist assistant, executive director, recruiter, and writer. And that's the lineage of jobs and work that I feel like is so important to honor in the work that I do and in the path that I sort of help people try to find or within is because there we all have that lineage. And it's remarkable to start asking about that lineage and understanding what you stand in front of and understanding the value of that work and what work means. And it's so different than the energy of the millennial be an entrepreneur, start everything new, just go for it.
Or just like me.
Me, yeah, exactly. It's not. You are you standing in front of a history of people that stand behind me right now. And the history of work. And like to be able to consider that in the choices that we make for ourselves and to be able to honor that with the work that we do with our own hands is so important. And it changes the tenor of the work that we do.
Can you talk a little bit more about your previous book, Doing Good?
Yeah. So Making Good was all,
Making Good, yeah.
I wrote it in 2012 with a friend of mine named Billy Parrish, who was sort of foundational in the youth climate change movement, and we wrote it about the intersection between business and social purpose and the ways that companies can do good. So this was like kind of looking at early days of like Warby Parker, Tom Shoes, social entrepreneurship, like understanding that landscape. And it's been interesting to see. It's like been 10, 12 years since that book and like what's come true and what's not. And like where some like business doesn't have all the answers. And that's why I think the book was a lot more uh, systemic, looking at like what are the systems at play, can businesses make a difference, how can capitalism do good or not, and and 50 ways to get a job is so much more about the personal. So it's like kind of moves from system to personal, where it's like how do we find purpose in our everyday? How do we answer the question of what are we doing right now? And yes, we want to work in companies or nonprofits or within the system that we currently live in, but how do we use that and understand our role in that? And yeah, those are the two different books. And I think it was such a pleasure to write it with Billy because he's such a systems guy and I'm such a personal thinker that it was like a real blend between those two things. And I feel like the push and pull of that conversation was just fun.
Let's shift gears a bit, and we have a little bit of time left, and I want to talk about the exercise uh, that's called making a structural changes to your living space, because it's not something that you usually find. It's one of those exercises that you won't find in any other job book. It was a section that really spoke to me, examining your physical environment and making changes that help you move towards who you want to be. I mean, it seems like such a simple idea, but it's very powerful. I told you before, I read the microwave example in that section. I deleted Netflix off my phone because it just, changing the physical layout of what's on my phone it made a difference. And then you also, within that extra, you talk about toleration. So maybe you could also talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So the exercise, it's also like, why would this be in a job book? But it's there, these types of exercises are in there for the same reason that everything that is in that book is in there, is that they're moments to give yourself agency. They're moments to give yourself control. They're moments to make you feel a different way in what you're doing every day. It makes you feel like you're in control of your space. The smallest changes, they don't, it doesn't need to be a rent out. It can be like literally moving apps around on your phone, or it can be placing a picture next to where you cook your food that makes you think about a certain place or a certain type of meal or a certain thing. And these small micro changes in your apartment or home end up showing you um, that you can have control not only of your space, but over your mental space. And it gives you an ability to know that you can also do that in your career, in the decisions you make, in the jobs you have, in these small different ways. And I really like to find ways that you can practice these things in like micro moments in your life. And then when you get strong enough, it just becomes a habit to do that and to make things your own and to make these small changes, so that when you end up getting faced with a big decision, you're out of practice. You're already prioritizing the thing that would make you feel the way you want to feel, instead of like just rising to the occasion. I think there was it was an interview I did with somebody that was had military training, Canadian military, and they said you never rise to the occasion, you fall back to routine. And so the training is just about your routine. So you're never all of a sudden the hero. You are just doing what you were trained to do. And especially in moments that are big and large and uncertain, that have a lot of fear in them, which is career transitions are hotbeds for that. Um, you fall back to what you know. So a lot of the 50 ways to get a job, or the first half of the book at least, is there's a lot of exercises that are all about training yourself in these really small ways, but that's what it's doing. It's training and changing your routine. It's changing how you think about interacting with your phone, or with your apartment, or with your entryway into your apartment, and where you take off your shoes, and like how that could be, what do you want to feel in that moment, and how could you make a small change to feel that way. And all of a sudden things shift in a weird, imperceptible way, but they do. And um, yeah, it's a terrific, actually it's a terrific weekend. It's a terrific way to spend 2 days in your space, or to make your space your own. The tolerations exercise you mentioned is an exercise that's very similar in the purpose and how it relates to getting a job, but it's an idea that make a list of everything that you tolerate. And so a toleration is kind of defined as something that's not enough. It's like bugs you, but it's not enough to change. So it's like the zipper is always sticking. The door, my front door right now, like makes a creaky sound every time that somebody opens it. It's like literal small moments like that. And you can almost go through your daily routine to identify them. So like, what do you do when you wake up? Oh, I always run out of toothpaste. Oh, this is always a little bit annoying. And you make a list, and it could be 50 of it. It won't take long to make a list of tolerations. And then the next step is to give yourself a budget of whatever you want, $50, $75, $20, whatever you have, or just time, just 5 hours, 3 hours, whatever you have. And try to remove as many of those tolerations all in one go. It's just blitz it. Take a Saturday, take a Friday, and just try to get rid of all the tolerations. So like if the zipper's stuck, go take it to the tailor, get a new zipper put on it. And if you're always running out of toothpaste, go and buy three things of toothpaste, or take one that doesn't have a cap, whatever, all those small little things that are annoying, and fix them. And what happens is it's just like this, the world works for you in this way that like you wake up on Monday and like you start your day and the world just works. It just like things just feel easy. And like that feeling of ease, like it's terrific. I feel like I try to do this exercise, like probably I end up doing it maybe twice a year. It's just like it's just so rewarding and it's so easy and you're like, why did I wait, X amount of time or never to do that? And it was an exercise that came from somebody named Thomas Leonard, and he was a terrific coach. And um, but it's always stuck with me as one of the like best exercises to like give yourself agency over your environment and your mental space and your life.
It
Pretty
felt good
critical.
just even just reading it. I felt a sense of ease to think that I could do this and it's going to make me feel good.
It's true. It's true.
So Buddhism comes up a lot in the book. You talk about a lot of different Buddhist concepts, and I wanna ask you about Buddhist economics. It's a topic that's been around for a long time,
Yeah.
um, and how does it fit in here, or what is it, and how does it fit in here?
Yeah, Buddhist economics, I mean, is popularized in the book Small is Beautiful by
I
Sri
read
Aurobindo.
that's one of my favorite books.
Yeah,
I
it's
saw
a
Buddhist
great.
economics and I said, "This is it right here. I have to ask about this too."
And then in that book, he describes it as uh, what basically asking the question, like, how can I achieve my intention with the least amount of work, resources, and toil? And why that question is so opening and fulfilling is because it doesn't deny anything. It actually enables you to do anything if it helps you achieve your intention, your given intention. So if your intention is to, like, a really simple, is like, if your intention is to have a simple lunch or have a lunch, eat and go back to work and feel good, then like what is the least amount of work, resources, and toil that could help you achieve that intention? Just reheating what you ate last night, eating it for a second and coming back could be the perfect answer. At the same time, if your intention is to really like show this client or somebody or impress them and they have values that are all about like eating and that, whatever, you can go to a really beautiful restaurant and spend a lot of money and go for this dinner with them, and that may be the least amount of work, resources, and toil for your given intention. So it's not saying, oh, just be simple. It's saying be aligned with what you're intending. And what's also so fulfilling about this is that that's actually a really hard question to answer. And it's a question we often don't answer or ask. It's like, what is our intention here? And that's takes knowledge and work and listening to ourselves, but it enables us, even just the act of answering it without even a lot of work or sitting there by yourself for 40 minutes to try to find the right answer for lunch. No, it's just like even just asking the question or just bringing your awareness, like, oh, what is my intention here for lunch? It helps train you on these small things to like realize when you're at these big questions or big junctures in life that you've developed a practice. You've developed something you do every day and a way of being that unfolds every day that actually helps you get the thing you need for the least amount of work, resources, and toil. Because if you don't work, if you don't put intention in there, like what is the intention, then oftentimes it's like, well, what should I be doing? and oh, what should I be doing is based on what everyone else is doing around me. This is what's normal. What's normal? And that's such a moving target. Like we all know that. You think you're happy and then you meet somebody else and then, oh my God, I want that what they have. And oh my God, I want what they it moves around. We live in North America, or I guess most of us do. And it's like we're bombarded by these things that tell us we're not enough, that we don't have enough, we need this other thing. But it just cuts right through that in such a simple question. It was like, what is your intention? And what is the least amount of work, resources, and toil? And of that applied to job search, I think is, going back to what I said earlier about job search being one of these moments where we have the ability to change our relationship to time, to routine, to money, to colleagues, to friends, to look, bringing that question to bear on all of these different moments or aspects of our life takes you to places that you wouldn't expect and will show you different solutions or enable you to eat different meals, wear different clothes, talk to different people that you may not have done prior. And that can be done in a way that feels that it's connected to your choice. You're choosing to do it. It fits with your intention, so it doesn't need to be fearful. It's not something that is totally uncomfortable because you are choosing what you actually need and then you're going and getting just that thing. And so if there's anything that is less fearful than just what do I need? Let me go get that thing is one of the most natural instincts we can possibly have. Comforting instincts we can possibly have.
Thank you. That was I like that explanation, and I want to tell people out there that if you can learn about Buddhist economics, the idea and the essay in which it's described it. The last I checked, it's been a few years. The book is available online for free. So
Yeah.
you don't have to. You can just be on your computer and type in Buddhist economics,
Yeah,
Schumacher, and it's there.
that chapter, like honestly, that chapter in that book is just it's one of the it's such a pleasure. It's like 5 pages or something.
Yeah, it's not long, but it's big.
Definitely.
So we just have a few minutes, and we've had this question before, and it's maybe it's too specific for all the people out there, but I know that we've had this question come up over time, and it's about nonprofits. You've spent a lot of time working with public benefit organizations, whether that's nonprofits, tax-wise, or public benefit corporations. Uh, so are there different approaches that you have or that you think that people should take in applying for jobs with nonprofits than traditional companies or government jobs?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I like would recommend is it's easier to start doing the work and following the path that the nonprofit of any nonprofit without than it is even in a company. So if a company is the urban design, it's harder to try to find the threads. It's really easy to start seeing yourself as a peer if you find an issue that you're really passionate about and start discovering like what that issue it has a very clear mission. You like want to change something in the world and then try to find all the different solutions. And it's really easy to do that work. So it is a lot easier to understand the mission of a nonprofit than it is a software service company or like one of the, like some sort of company that you just generally sells goods. It's really easy to find, and so you can start doing that work and start not working for free, but you can start doing the research and like start meeting people and start understanding what solutions are in that space, and that will give you such a different application than what normally people apply for. So both doing that work and then having a really clear idea of whatever skills you have in your life and there's a million skills finder skill tests. I'm sure every other career guide helps you like identify your skills. That exists out there. It's not hard. It's work, but it's doable. But do those, understand what skills, tactical skills you have, but then do the mission stuff, which is the stuff that's in 50 Ways to Get a Job. That is that like broader stroke, how you start seeing yourself as a peer in that space. How do you find yourself actually moving down that path? And then when you are going to approach them, you will have a lot to say that as a peer of what you understand the solutions are, why you chose them, why you're starting to do that work, examples of you starting to do that work, and then you just can explain the skills, which just goes back to the simple email. But all I can say is it's the same thing, but it's a lot easier to understand how you fit into with the mission. Um, but it's oftentimes what happens is people apply to those jobs with like, I have all the mission. Oh my God, I have this personal story. I really want it. I was affected by this. This is it. But then they forget to do the skill, the skills part. And you just don't forget that. It's like you get all the mission and no skills, or you get all the skills and no mission. So it's about trying to explain both in a way that's really clear, and it will stand out by far if you're able to do that effectively.
So that last point is really the key there.
Yeah.
That was good. I want to squeeze in one more question,
Sure.
and it's a question about questions. You had in a few well in a few sections you talk about asking yourself questions, and in one of the sections you talk about where you used to sit in panels in different places as an audience member, and you would take notes, and you would take notes of questions both that were inspired by the speakers and also just things that you were thinking of. You gave yourself permission. So what makes a question interesting to you?
Yeah, I mean, it honestly is a feel. It's an energy thing. I think, when when we read newspaper articles about people, or we like even hear talks about people and their career paths, it just seems like a very straight line. They're like, they had one question and they pursued it. Like every TED talk, it's like they had one question, how do lizards walk up walls? And then all of a sudden they spent 7 years investigating and they discovered that here's how people walk up walls and now it's being applied. It's like there's just like this one question. They're waiting for that one thing and then it was arrived. And that's not the reality of how it works. It actually, even if you talk to those people and you slow it down, there were a bunch of different paths. There are a bunch of different questions they were pursuing, and one just happened to stick around. They would never have predicted it at the beginning, but one kept on having the energy, kept on having the momentum. They kept on meeting people. They kept on finding other jobs that were related to it or research that was tied to it. And you end up moving down this path and then you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, my career has been about answering this one question. And that's that. But like that doesn't you can never there's no moment of arrival, there's not. That happens so rarely, and I only think it happens actually in TED Talks when people are like, I realize this is it. Like that doesn't actually happen for any of us. What happens is it's like a constant question of that you ask yourself of like, where is my energy? What is the thing that is interesting? And paying attention to that. But that's why that exercise of writing down notes or paying attention to questions was a practice that I had, was because you oftentimes we just let those questions come up and then they fade away and they drift off. Like, oh yeah, I wonder what makes a mirage, or like what just it could be something that is just like a very simple thing. But sometimes that question, if you get in the habit of putting it on a page, you get in the habit of writing it down, and then taking one step. It might be a Google search, and you might feel totally resolved. Oh, a mirage is created through this optical illusion with heat. Cool, done. That's it. I don't feel anything else. I don't need to keep on researching that. That's it. But then there'll be a question in there that actually feels like it draws you in, that has more to it. Like for me personally, I'm thinking a lot about like how do we change our relationship to time? Like why does time move fast and slow? And it's like something that's led me to read different books, talk to different people. It's like it just stuck around for like most of the pandemic for myself, and it's still here. It's still something I'm thinking about, and it's still something that's at the forefront of my mind. And I can't really explain why that question happens to be more interesting, or obviously the world has shifted and I experienced it firsthand. I'm sure we all did, but it's there for me. And that knowing that it's there and knowing that that's worthy of me putting more time into is is everything. And I kind of see our careers as a way of answering questions, and especially the 4 or 5 weeks that you have when you're looking for a job, like make it matter, make it interesting for yourself, like make it something that gives you control and like a feeling of excitement because you have this time, and you can and in treating this time as a way to answer a question, as our careers are a way to answer a question, you end up in different places, meeting different people, and seeing different opportunities that I can guarantee you would not have seen otherwise.
I think that's the perfect place to end our evening. Dev, thank you very much. That was a really lovely conversation. Uh, Things are popping up in my head, and I hope that our audience also enjoyed the conversation and was inspired from the conversation. I feel like this conversation is a really great sort of jumping off point. Now that you've heard about the book and you've heard some these interesting ideas that Dev has talked about, go and get the book.
At
I'm
your
going to send a
library.
follow-up email. You can buy the book. You can get it from the library. There's so many ways, and or just go to the website. The website has the book on it, 50 ways to get a job.com. I'll send all the information in the follow-up email tomorrow. So if you don't remember everything I just said, that's okay. You'll have it in your email box.
Thank you
So
so much, guys. Appreciate it.
thanks, Dev. And
Bye.
then before we conclude, just a couple of more things. Next week, we have a program about how to get hired in hospitality. I'm going to post the information in the chat. And if this is a topic that is of interest to you, if you know somebody who's interested in getting a job in the wide world of hospitality, go ahead and sign up for that program. And I just posted the link in the chat. And finally, I always ask, and you know that I appreciate it, if you could please fill out our post-event survey. We always follow up with those surveys. I read all of them, and we use them to plan our future programs. So I'm going to post the link for that survey in the chat right now. There it goes. All right. Once again, thank you very much, Dev, for the great conversation. And thank you, everybody who joined us this evening. Have a good night and good luck with your job searches.